I have found AI to be like really exciting, but also kind of anxiety inducing, in part because, and maybe we could sort of start here. It feels like a place where everyone is, at least in tech, is incentivized to be like, I'm using AI 43 times a day, including 2 times when I sleep. And you're like, what? And like, if you have, and then it'll be things like, if you're still using a lawyer to review contracts, what are you also using a horse and buggy? And so you hear that, like that kind of argument, and just like, AI can do literally everything. Why are you even working anymore? I have 45 agents running 12 companies. That sort of, like, not an exaggeration. Like, I feel like people are putting this kind of content out into the world, some of whom are serious people. Hi, I'm excited for you to listen to the most recent episode. I sit down with longtime friends. They were actually my resident tutors when I was a college student. And now John Horton is a professor at MIT focusing on AI. And Robin Horton, his wife, is a lawyer who's worked at incredible startups like Uber, and now they are together building an AI company. I asked them all of my Too Stupid to Ask AI related questions, including what do they think the impact is going to be on new grads? How can I be more productive using the tools? And how can we separate the sort of hype from reality? And while I've got you, would love to just quickly share that this podcast is sponsored by Athena, the company that I run. We provide compliance training that employees don't hate, as well as a bunch of other compliance tools. Please do check Athena out. I feel like this is a very funny intro because the most pertinent part is that you all were my like resident tutors at Harvard, which is like a very
what
funny.
We produced.
Exactly. Like, and so you were dorm parents. I don't believe that I got totally wasted at any point, and you needed to escort me to the hospital
once or twice. Yeah.
No. All I remember is I tried to like warn you about the army,
but it was too late.
It was too late.
Yeah, I was contrived. You caught me after I had sort of signed away all the things. Mm-hmm. John, you were in the army previously as a tanker, which I feel like my son thinks is pretty cool because he thinks tanks are cool. And you are now a professor of AI, not an AI professor, as in you're a real person, not a bot. At MIT, a very real institution. And then Robin, you are a lawyer.
Oh, well, I have kept up my bar memberships, but I'm not a practicing lawyer.
Okay. But so I should not call you if
I can give advice.
Right. What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah.
You've worked at many successful startups. I feel like Uber being the one that like comes to mind as sort of like policy/legal, so not just strictly legal, but sort of in the operational realm. And then the two of you, I should say, are married. I think that's public knowledge. I don't feel like I'm outing anything.
Yep.
And have also started a company in the AI space. So very excited to ask you a little bit about that toward the end. And then most pertinent piece of information is my son puked all over your couch about 2 weeks ago, and you were very nice about it.
He kind of like, I was after,
mistakes were made.
He was like, I was like, Daniel, how are you feeling now? He's like, much better. Like, I think he just needed to get that out.
And I do think if I look back on it, I do think he had a lot of sweets. Like, I think that might be more of a sweets induced puking.
I thought it was
versus
just milk,
like
but
actual vomit.
Oh,
anyway.
So you don't think he actually got sick?
I think that sometimes his like eyes are bigger than his tummy with all things sweets. That's what I suspect. I feel like he and Paul kind of melded to like in basement eat sugar, like I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say he was faking it, but so I'm very excited to chat with you all because so I'm one of the co-founders of Athena, but I'm not the technical co-founder, and I can use a computer. But I would not say that I am like, I'm in no way an engineer or anything like that. And I have found AI to be like really exciting, but also kind of anxiety inducing, in part because, and maybe we could sort of start here, it feels like a place where everyone is, at least in tech, is incentivized to be like, I'm using AI 43 times a day, including 2 times when I sleep. And you're like, what? And like, if you have, and then it'll be things like, if you're still using a lawyer to review contracts, what are you also using a horse and buggy? And so you hear that, like that kind of argument, and just like, AI can do literally everything. Why are you even working anymore? I have 45 agents running 12 companies. That sort of, like, not an exaggeration. Like, I feel like people are putting this kind of content out into the world, some of whom are serious people. And then on the other hand, I hear things like, a report, I think it was actually using Upwork as like Upwork people as like the control or something. And it was like AI only worked like, I don't know, 20% of the time. And you're sort of like, well, if I outsourced everything to a person who only works 20% of the time, I would assume that like that business will not work. And so I'm finding it really difficult to find like, call it reputable sources to figure out what AI can and can't do. So maybe starting place is like what sources do you look to sort of separate like noise and hype from reality?
I mean, so there's a few folks that I listen to or read. You know, I think Ethan Mollick at Wharton is a great example of someone who's not technical and doesn't have like, he's not, I mean, he like literally has a book that is worth reading, but he's not talking his book like, oh, you know, he's like super invested in you using like this specific tool. I mean, I think that there's like a fair amount of posturing and, you know, wanting to seem like you're with it. And, but I think like what is cool about these technologies is that you can go try things out yourself and decide if you think it's useful. You know, so if you imagine, electricity is a big deal. And, you know, like we're reading newspaper articles about electricity. If you go try it at home, you know, you might electrocute yourself. With AI, like you've got some problem, like go put it in and sort of like see what Claude does or see what ChatGPT does. One thing a piece of advice I've heard, which I think is good, is have your own like personal eval, right? In the sense of like, these are tasks that I would like to be able to use this technology for. And then, you know, to keep yourself honest, write down like, what would a good answer look like? Or what would I expect here? And don't kind of get misled just by, oh, like that seems flashy and right. But like, how does it actually do against something where you know what right looks like?
I would also add that the number of hours or the number of tasks seems like completely beside the point. Do you have some AI tool doing something that's really important for your business that takes, you know, an arbitrary amount of time? Like that's what matters, right? Have you found like the right tool for the right task that either speeds something up or like dramatically expands the way you were doing it before, you know, in a much more thorough, iterative way than, you know, sitting there and figuring out, well, that was, you know, 2 hours a day we're doing it. It's just, you know, not the important part. And, you know, these tools come out and all of a sudden something that we were doing with an AI tool last week that did take, you know, 5 times as many hours. Now, actually, the new tool is even faster in that way. But I wouldn't even say it's necessarily like the speed at which a task is getting done that's the important part. Like, I think that with a lot of these tools, and frankly, like Talk Around Book, the way we're designing our tools is we're designing tools, right? We think of it as like the sort of, for lack of a better word, the wrong approach. How do I extract this like highly factual single one and done answer from an AI tool? Whereas if you approach it like, what are all the things that I could do better? And it may take a long time, but by design, right? Like I wrote some new content for my users, like some new module at Athena, say, and you are going to roll it out to real people. But let's say you really want to just spend more time iterating on, you know, how you present it for different audiences. So you may now spend more time with AI than you did before, but it's because you can use it to like make more improvements, if that makes sense.
I think that does make sense. So you're saying like the win isn't like using it whatever 85 times. I'll keep increasing the number like an
Make
hour.
a point.
And more like either increasing the quality of something you care about or presumably like decreasing the amount of time you have to spend on something that drains your energy, like something like that. Like the win isn't like I'm using a bunch of different tools or something. It's not like a quantity. I feel like it's how engineers talk about code. Like lines of code does not equal success.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the point about things that you don't have the energy for, I feel like I've gotten the greatest use out of tools for coding, not by having it do stuff I don't know how to do myself, but stuff that I find really tedious and so ends up getting sort of short shrift. But, you know, you can tell Claude Code or, you know, Cursor agent and be like, hey, the documentation in this module is like really bad. Go ahead and improve it. Or, you know what, this stuff is under tested. I need you to go write a lot more tests. And, you know, I'm, you know, screwing around on social media, but at the same time being like, yep, that looks right. That looks right. Oh, no, you're going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of like lightly managing it. And, you know, it's some of it's stuff I probably would have just work that wouldn't have been done or maybe would have been done far in the future. And now I'm kind of using it to do it. Like I wanted to do it, but not it wouldn't be worth like, let me set aside a whole Sunday to do it. But with some of these tools, I can do it super fast. And so it's more like expanding what the things that you do can be really powerful.
And Jen, you made a point of like, it's not like electricity, you're not going to like burn the house down or, I don't know, electrocute yourself. I guess that's two bad things that can happen. But I work with a lot of lawyers, and there's definitely a concern that like, well, you might not burn the house down, but there's like, examples. I think there's one apocryphal one about like some engineers at Samsung put like really key design information into one of the LLMs that was not an enterprise license, and it sort of like showed up on the internet. And so I was like, hey, this is, and I have not looked into this, but I've heard like lawyers reference this as an example of like, there's still like data privacy concerns and like where are things going. So like Robin in particular, if you're thinking back to like the concerns you might have had as a lawyer at a large company like Uber, where you might not want to tell everyone like, hey guys, just experiment, like go nuts. Like how would you think about the balance of the guardrails that you'd want to give people? Because I feel like if I was in true experimentation mode, I think I would be much bolder than I am, because I'm just like, I don't know, or like, like, does that make sense? Like, I feel like there still feels like there's a little bit of fear.
Lawyers love precision, right? And so, if you're looking for very precise things from the AI that you're using, might be very disappointed. On the other hand, and yes, and to address the privacy concern, if you're inputting information that's sensitive, yeah, you need to sort of rethink how can I, use this tool without providing information that I don't necessarily think I can share. I'm not sure if I should share, that sort of thing. But if you come to it with like a goal of getting feedback on your process as opposed to like the particular answer, I think that's where, you can probably satisfy a lot of privacy and data concerns. You're just asking for like sort of meta ideas on like whatever your task is. Can you describe your task without putting in the actual data? Can you create some synthetic data to sort of simulate the task that you're doing, right? So let's say, you want to do this task and you have a real data set or some, information that, you shouldn't, put into the tool. Can you create like a fake sample of it to like simulate the thing that you're going to do, learn from like, what feedback the AI gave you, what pointers it gave you. But again, then just, take that back, run your real task and that sort of thing. So I guess I would say simulate your sensitive situations is sort of a broad idea I would use.
I think also to build on what Robin was saying, I think these tools often work better when you provide more structure and scaffolding anyway. And so like taking like a bunch of raw data and dumping it in and be like, you figure it out. Like that's probably not a good strategy anyway, versus like, hey, let me tell you the structure of my data, the structure of my problem, maybe like here, like help me generate some synthetic versions. And then let me see the analysis you would do, or like, how would you approach it? That's probably a higher value use anyway. And then, once you've done that work, then actually going and doing it for real in a a secured environment or something is totally sensible.
Managing it as building blocks of, you don't know necessarily what your new process is going to look like after, inserting AI into your steps, but try to break it into blocks that it really focuses on, I think is a good strategy.
So not to make you all my AI therapists, but I have two particular challenges that I'm working through. Okay, so one is, so I'm CEO, so I have like, I don't know, 8 direct reports or something. And I have found that like, I haven't found amazing personal use cases for AI. I found like little wins here and there. So examples are, I'm the typo queen. And somehow, despite LinkedIn being like a platform in which you put words into, like does not have amazing catches for typos in posts. So they're like, okay, like that's been good. But kind of to your point, I will put it in and it'll be like, I recommend 7 changes. And I'm like, well, 6 of those are really bad because my style is better than your style. And then one of those is like, yep, that was the wrong choose. Like, or something where I was like, I spelled that word wrong. But like, Yeah, I have not found like amazing personal use cases. What I have found to be really helpful is like encouraging the company to continue to find use cases like internally, whether they are like internal improvements or in product uses, just to like make sure that we're staying up to the cutting edge, that we're meeting and exceeding our customers' expectations, etc. Do you think that I might be like overlooking a personal like use? But I guess personal, I mean like personal professional.
Well, our son Paul is a big fan of using it to write stories for himself. So
Okay.
you could save on like book purchases by having it write
Okay.
narratives about like your grandparents' dog going on adventures or something. Which
Okay,
is
that's
what
not one that I
that's
expected. Kind of to the point.
yeah
Also, this is sort of a moot point because I recently got Robert Caro's biography of Robert Moses, which I'll be reading for the next
oh you're
You'll be
good
75
forever.
busy.
years. I'm
Yeah.
literally, I will, when people are like, what are you reading? It's like, still that.
Yeah.
So
Well,
thank you. But unfortunately, yeah, Robert Caro already did that for me.
how do people at your company find out about tools? Because I don't know, all websites like kind of look similar, and you get pitches in your inbox,
Mm.
and like, it's, we all get
You
these
get
like
magazine
terrible,
covers.
yeah,
Mhm.
I'm not sure what to do with that, but like it's not, they don't know what your use cases are going to be, even, even less than you do. So I just wonder, like, what's like an efficient.
You all look adorable. I love that you felt too far away from each other and so needed to come together.
Intense.
Also, shakes fist to internet in Cambridge.
Yeah, no, we're a sophisticated technology company that has to share
Ye old
share a
headphone set.
wired headphone set.
This is some cutting edge AI that we're doing right here, right now.
Yes.
Which is, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so Robin, you asked me a very good question, which, as a side note, I think is such a lawyer thing. I'm not a lawyer, but like my husband, everyone I work with is lawyers. And I'm like, I'm speaking in generalities. And they're always like, can I ask a couple clarifying questions to see if the words you said are the words you mean? And like 99% of the time, they're not. Like, just like,
You've got a great husband,
okay,
Roxanne. Shows well.
I'm a big fan. Big fan. Okay, so you're like, how do people learn new tools? Because you're right that it's not a great use of our time. I mean, like, I probably get 75 emails a day that are like
Exactly.
Varying degrees of good to horrendous, truly bad. A lot of like, hi, sir, which I'm just sort of like, no, like, not your best pitches, and they're bad. However, what I have found really useful is in founder circles, dinners, people I trust, whenever someone says like, oh, I found a use case that is really good, just like bringing that back to my team. I have found that the best way to do this is incredibly manual and old school and just sort of like word of mouth kind of things, because I don't feel like I can trust just about anything that's put out there, because I feel like it is vendors talking their own book, it is investors talking their book, like, all of that. Yeah, that is how but then I just like send missives into our internal Slack being like, could be interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think a lot of it probably is just like the language of your, for lack of a better word, tasks. Like, what are the things that actually happen at Athena, right?
Totally.
Nuts and bolts, like what, like particular people's particular day-to-day tasks,
Yeah.
right? As opposed to like Athena, the company, what would they possibly do with this tool? So yeah, I would say it's a little bit of a lack of imagination, right? Instead of just blasting you with like high level jargon about a tool, it's, you can use AI for this too, by the way, like pausing and thinking, okay, the people who work at Athena who have these roles, what are they actually doing? And what is like a real sort of under the hood thing that they might be doing every day? So I know nothing about sales, but I'm sure there's a million like very particular tasks where you're like,
Totally.
how could this tool help with this very precise task? And so I think, these pitchy emails we all get, they're like way too high level, and they totally miss the mark, because you're like, I don't even really, like, I can't just immediately picture myself using this. I don't know what it looks like on, is it an
Totally.
interface, or is it like a coding tool? I don't know what. So I don't know. On the other hand, you don't have that much time to get somebody's attention. So yeah, you kind of need someone to have already used it and sort of made the connection for you.
100%. Like word of mouth is really powerful.
No, I think there's this like point of view, thinking about like the AI industry more generally, that people sometimes like, oh, that's just like a GPT wrapper, and like they kind of mean it sort of like in a pejorative sense. But I think that there's like a good argument that tools that are built by people that have a lot of like real domain expertise, or like they know that vertical really well, they're ultimately going to make the better, higher value tools, just because, right, it's like there's so many things like, well, if you know this exact context, you can build a tool in a way that's actually going to work and be useful to people, not just bolting
I think
on
that's
something.
the exact pitch of like GC.ai, or, you know, it's like this is a legal tool built for like a very specific persona versus sort of general use case things, which, you know, just to me like intuitively makes sense.
Exactly.
I think also that there's a lot of people who are, you know, maybe like are in our circle or world, and like they think about technology and business constantly, and it's like, well, what's the latest tool and the latest tool, and like there's just huge swaths of the economy that are not so you know, focused or enamored with tech, and you know, like you know, my parents, they run a construction business, and like I think they're like pretty much, you know, my dad is actually a huge fan of ChatGPT and like uses it for all sorts of things, but you know, they're not, it's really not like they don't talk about like, oh, we're going to change things. Like fundamentally, they still need people to pour concrete, and like you need people to talk to customers. Like it's not a radical change the way it would be if, you know, we had a company that was doing something where, oh, this is like really like AI is going to really kind of to nail this task. And so I think that what this partially does is, I think change will probably be slower than people would think, because there's just big parts of the economy that the stuff is like, you know, it's maybe marginal.
Yeah. I think of that every time I go to the airport, and I'm like, can I change seats to be with my son? And they're like, beep, 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 beep. And like 12 minutes later, they're like printing out a boarding pass. And it's like, how is that? What? You know? And so it's like, okay, well, like, I don't know, whatever software they're running is not cutting edge. That's the answer. Could you tell us a little bit about what you're building and where people can, you know, if they want more of your insights and or jokes, find you?
Jokes, Twitter. Yeah. Okay. Robin, why don't you tell us?
Yeah, so our company is called Expected Parrot, and in a nutshell, we're building tools for researchers of all different kinds to use AI to run surveys, to run experiments, where instead of you know, finding 1,000 users, say, or 1,000 potential users to give you feedback on your product or whatever it is you have questions about, you can use our tools to create personas that these very modern language models will sort of step in and impersonate people to answer questions for you. And the so what is like, you know, you could sit at ChatGPT and chat all day with this, but the so what is that our tools make it easy to create really rich data sets. So you can, you know, specify all different AI agents to answer different questions and so forth, go through a process or whatever it is, lots of different tasks you can set up and get the information back in a data set that you can analyze, that you can actually go action on, that sort of thing.
Well, this is really cool. And it's very fun to talk to you all, in particular with the shared headset. Something about that just makes it like especially adorable. I don't know. Just, like, you guys seem like you get along, you know? Like I feel like sharing AirPods is like a real act of trust. So I love this.
I think so. Yeah. Well, it is. I feel like sometimes people are a little bit down on the idea of like a husband and wife team working on a startup together.
We've heard that, yeah.
But you know, our view is that it's just, we kind of have this like around the clock product manager meeting. Like we can just talk about features constantly, and
it's very convenient.
Someone can shout issues from the kitchen.
I mean, I love it. I would love to get my husband to work with me, except I wouldn't, because he would leave me, both the company and our marriage. Like both would end pretty quickly. He would not. I would find it really wonderful. I know that he wouldn't, but it's great that it works. That it works for you.
Tease you on this.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also great that I know the limits, you know? So it's like, I feel like this, but I don't know. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Cool.
We're having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So.
I've been waiting my whole life to say this. If you liked this episode, please like, subscribe, and follow us on LinkedIn, because that's the only social media platform where we hang out.